Thank you very much, and it's so nice to be with all of you. I first came to this country on New Year's Eve 2010, where I celebrated 2011 at your Opera House, so I don't know if any of you were there. And I next visited Romania in 2020 when I was chairman of something called the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And as the Deputy Secretary knows so well, Deputy Secretary General knows so well, and as we've heard on each of the panels today, you have to do long-term planning with partners and allies. And we're so proud of where Romania is today. And that's been a long process for you. And this conference is raising the issues of where you need to go for the future. So I just want to share with you a little bit, and thank you, Steve, on my experience at EXIM. Committed to helping countries like Romania around the world. And I had an honor in October of 2020 to welcome to the U.S. Export-Import Bank in Washington your Minister for Economy, Energy, and Business Climate, Popescu. And we signed a $7 billion memorandum of understanding because the United States, under my leadership, very much wanted to work together to promote business development, particularly in energy and infrastructure here. And then just 2 months later, I was invited to come to Bucharest, and I actually was the very first official external meeting with your interim Prime Minister, Ciaucă. And so we then focused again in detail on how we can help and expand and modernize your nuclear energy efforts. And I was welcomed to Cernavodă, where I met with the CEO, Cosmin Ghita, and saw where 20% of your power comes from. But I also heard the story of how you really need to modernize what you're doing. And Dan mentioned Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan had the foresight with Romania as well. And back then, in 1981, when he was just 4 months into office, the U.S. Export-Import Bank had a law saying that could not invest in certain communist and socialist countries. And Ronald Reagan had the foresight to say, I'm going to ask for an exception, and actually made an investment through EXIM of $121 million to allow Cernavodă to be able to purchase generators from the United States. So it started then. I'm also involved with an effort through the Richard Nixon Presidential Library called the Nixon Seminar. We gather monthly online to talk about key foreign policy issues. And I know Richard Nixon was very important to Romania in the start of where you are today. So it's a wonderful, wonderful path to be on. So I was here to see that. And then I had the honor of meeting Deputy Secretary General Joanna at a Kroc event, Keith Kroc Institute event in May of this year. So thank you very much, sir, for asking me to be here today. Even though I'm no longer in office, because I worked in the prior administration, my successor has continued the efforts that we started. And so I'm so pleased to see that back in September of this year, a $57 million direct loan was approved by the U.S. EXIM Bank for a company called Enegro Nuclear to allow for a pre-construction engineering and feasibility study for Cernavodă. And we've seen that letters of interest totaling $3 billion for companies like Fluor and NewScale to come and do hopeful investments here are on the horizon. So what does it take? We care about having good, trusted relationships. And what does it take? And Iona Mates, I also want to recognize her. She challenged me to address today, what does it take to do friendshoring in Romania? And I don't know if you've heard of that term, but we want the United States here, not China, not Russia. We want the United States here. And so friendshoring with partner and ally countries. What does it take? I'm involved with another organization called the Council on Competitiveness, and they have some pro-growth competitiveness policy pillars. And we've talked about a lot of those today, but I just want to underscore that. What does it take for the future? Talent, You have a huge talent, and we really want to see your diaspora community come back as well. Too much of your population is living outside your borders, and so you need to create the environment for having them return. Also technology, we're hearing a lot about that, and the future is great. Investment in infrastructure, physical and cyber. But you need to have a regulatory framework that's based on the rule of law. You need to have transparency. You need to have a strong fiscal and monetary policy, a good corporate tax structure, IP protection, and antitrust efforts. Sounds like Romania is on the right track, but some challenges I have for you. You must have an even regulatory system to entice more dynamic foreign investment. So those of you who are elected officials, please focus in on that, an even regulatory system. You also need a process for business regulation that's streamlined. You're doing that now. You're doing good work in that. But you need to also focus in a little bit more on your bankruptcy protection. So take a look at that. Labor regulation flexibility. That's another challenge for Romania right now. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And then always, we can't have corruption. And you're doing a good job, but we always need to be mindful and hold bad actors accountable so that that trust continues. So I hope, Steve, that answers some of your questions.
Let me go a notch further. And since I think my friend Mircea Giona is in the audience, hello Mircea, I was at David Bradley's home last night, here in Washington. And, I think that, you're very, very lucky in Romania to have such an important architect of global security kind of committed in these global security things. And I think if I were interviewing Mircea right now, he would say that America is engaged, America is showing up, and America is vital to the security tapestry in Europe. And I guess my question is, in the private side, basically Dan was getting at this issue, and Michelle as well, of the distinction between government and private sector. And I guess where I have a little bit of doubt or concern is on the robustness of attention of American firms in the world. And I just want to be honest that I wish it were there, but we're not going to have a rah-rah conference. We're going to have a real discussion. What do you think needs to be done to leverage more engagement from major US firms in the region so that they're not necessarily easily seduced or attracted to the China option or other options? And that's why I saw EXIM so important. And EXIM has done incredibly important things. But is it enough? Are we doing what we should be doing on the US side of the equation, separate from what Romania is? Because I see China basically in every market. I'm not sure I see some of our US major firms in every market.
So the question is for whom?
Well, I'm asking Kimberly, but you can all jump in.
Yeah. Well, I'll just begin. I think we're making those efforts. The principles I just laid out will help for more. I also think more partnership and engagement in Washington. I know the embassy is quite engaged in Washington, but it's having these relationships through competitiveness councils or through think tanks, but also through chambers, the Romanian Chamber of Commerce, the US Chamber of Commerce. When I was at EXIM, I pounded really hard, and this was even during COVID, to help US small businesses understand across all 50 states the beauty of the global marketplace. For America, 95% of the customers live outside the US, but it's helping American companies understand what we need to do to bridge the gap. Government can help with that, but I think also Romania is sharing its story in the United States is key in building that trust one-on-one.
Right.
And I'll defer to my colleagues.